Let's go to Mr. Lane, Paul Lane, on line 2 now. Good to have you back.
Hey, Pete, how you doing this afternoon?
Very good, sir. Mount Pearl South. I'll get it right this time.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Pete, I wanted to speak about Blue Zone parking regulations. Before I do, though, I just want to say I was listening to your preamble as it related to, I guess, DarkNL and the explanations that have been given. And I agree with you 100% on your assessment. I'm certainly glad to hear that, that Nalcor is now, I guess, in line or online or whatever the terminology was, with the consultant, and they both agree that, that there were definite maintenance issues, and they're planning on addressing them, and I think that's a good thing. But I, like you, certainly believe that all of this could have been avoided for sure. And, I have to ask the question, why wasn't the necessary upgrades done? Why wasn't the maintenance done? Who knew about it or who ought to have known about it? And ultimately, who was responsible? And that's the part I'm really not hearing. And but it's very troubling to know that we could be facing these rolling blackouts for the next 2 or 3 years. Particularly, as I said, given the fact that it could have been avoided had the proper maintenance been done.
Absolutely. It's one thing to say, okay, what happened in the past, we know why it happened. It should not have. And therefore there's some, responsibility to be owned up to there by the people within Newfoundland Labrador Hydro and or Nalcor. But also, why do we have to look forward now to the same potential in the years between now and whenever Muskrat Falls is online? It just seems to me that if we know what the issues are and we've identified what maintenance should have been done, and they're doing it now, then I don't understand why they're still suggesting we are going to have these rolling blackouts for the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, again, I don't know all the details, but I would suggest that my take on it, at least for what that's worth, is that it's like anything else, Pete. If you have a relatively small amount of maintenance or a reasonable amount of maintenance to do to get yourself up and running, I guess you can get it done between now and next winter. But if you have a large amount of maintenance and a large amount of neglect which has taken place, I'm assuming they're in a situation where they can't possibly get it all done because it was let to go too far for too long without having it on. That would be my take on it. Now, again, I'm not an engineer or an expert in that system, and I don't know all the details, but common sense would tell me that if it was as simple as just simply putting in place what needs to be put in place, they could have it done for next winter. And if they can't do that, then it tells me that there's just so much to do that it can't possibly be done, which is a bigger issue, again, that it was left to go even worse than perhaps many of us thought. But anyway, I guess we'll have to suffer through it, whatever it is, and hopefully they can do everything possible to mitigate against this happening too often anyway. But it certainly is troubling.
Suffice it to say that there's clear indication that some incompetence on some level is evident here, and why that happened should be answered, and how we're going to prevent it from reoccurring is the other one. All right, let's get to your Blue Zone parking.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. So this is something I raised a while back, and I've certainly raised it in the House of Assembly. I presented petitions. Back nearly 2 years ago, the government brought in new Blue Zone parking regulations. And those regulations were unanimously passed in the House of Assembly by all sides. Everybody agreed to them, and why wouldn't they? Because it's really about providing proper access for people who have mobility issues. And there was a number of things in there which, required to have, sufficient blue zones, to have them at the sufficient width, to have them, painted properly with the proper symbols, and also to have permanent signage in place and a permanent sign for each and every spot. And that was 2 years ago. And since that time, we've, in going around the city and so on, and in other areas around the general area, that, I have noticed that there are many, many non-compliance issues out there, which really speaks to the enforcement around it. And that's something that I've been pushing the minister on to start, doing proper enforcement of the regulations. I will continue to do so. But one of the things that I found even more glaring, quite frankly, and I would suggest should be a little embarrassing for government, is the fact that we actually have a number of government-owned facilities which are not even in compliance with their own regulations. And I'm talking about places like the Health Sciences Centre, St. Clair's Hospital, the Workers' Compensation Building of all places, where you have people actually with disabilities and injuries that need access, Newfoundland Labrador Housing, the Natural Resources Building, liquor stores, AES offices, and all of these places are not even in compliance with their own government regulations, which is disgraceful to my mind. So,
which makes it very difficult for them to go out and enforce other people that are
absolutely. It would be very hypocritical, although it is still required to be done. So, no doubt when I raised it a couple of months ago, I mean, we were in the middle of the winter and so on, and obviously, one would expect that you would have to wait now till the spring of the year, the snow melts, to actually get crews out there and start installing the proper signage and so on. So, now that we are into the spring of the year, the winter hopefully is behind us. Again, I'm going to call upon the Minister of Service NL, Minister Cromwell, that at the very least, let's get our own government facilities, let's get our hospitals and all of our government facilities up to standard when it comes to providing appropriate access for persons with mobility issues in our province. It's the right thing to do, and they need to get on it right away. And of course, beyond that, they also need to start enforcing it in all of the various commercial establishments as well, because people with mobility issues have a right to be able to gain access to facilities and so on, just like you and I, just like the rest of us. And that's what we demand as a society. That's what needs to be done. That's what I'm calling on the Minister to do.
Hear, hear. And in the meantime, I mean, spots that don't have the appropriate signage there, I imagine they would be highly contestable, those $400 tickets, if you got one, and you can demonstrate that the spot didn't give the adequate indication that it is one of those spots. Have you seen any cases, or are you aware of anybody?
I haven't seen that, Pete, but that is a very, and quite honest with you, that's not even something that occurred to me. That's a new thought, but a very valid one at that, because I know that quite often you hear, people when they get various tickets, parking tickets and so on, involving various types of violations for different areas. A lot of times you hear about, people getting off on technicalities because the sign wasn't in place, or it was covered up, or whatever the case might be. So that's also a very valid point, that if it's not properly marked and somebody does park in that spot, and then, thus creating a situation where someone who actually needs it and deserves it can't use it, then they could possibly get off with it. So that's another angle on it for sure. But I mean, and the whole issue of people that choose to knowingly park in blue zones is another issue on it to itself. And I certainly have no tolerance for people who do that. And I encourage anyone who sees somebody parking illegally in a clearly marked blue zone that they should report it to the authorities, get the license plate number so those people can be ticketed appropriately. But, the issue I'm referring to here is simply that having the properly marked spaces to begin with, that falls under the provincial government legislation, which was passed and needs to be enforced. So the Minister of Service NL needs to get his officials, out there, his staff out there enforcing these regulations as it applies to commercial properties, and as a very important first step, he needs to make sure that government cleans up their own act and enforces it upon our own government-owned facilities. All
right, sir. Listen, thanks very much for this. Off to our break. We'll talk to you again soon.
Not a problem, Pete. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and we'll see you next Sunday night. Looking forward to it.
Me too. Okay.
Okay, buddy. All the best. Bye.
And just before we go to the break, I know somebody who takes pictures of people who have parked improperly, spanning two spots and all that sort of thing, and they tweet them out for all to see with the license plate there evident. And somebody else who does the same sort of thing with people in blue zones. They check for the sticker. If they don't have the sticker and it's clear that they shouldn't be in the spot, they take a picture of that vehicle in the spot and tweet it out as well. Don't know if you've seen any of those or not, but that's what they're doing. So there you go. In time, you'll probably be caught out if you should do that. But he's got a good point about the signage. It needs to be there. It should be there. And especially with the hospitals and whatnot, let alone private and commercial parking spots.